Hey everyone, Mr. Rugi W here, aka Jeremy. I'm doing a short video today to show you House of the Dead 2 being played using positional guns using my S-JIHP PCB. And this right here is the House of the Dead 2 PCB. It's the very first revision Naomi motherboard. It was in a cage instead of what was done for final production, like this plastic case. The original one was in this cage, sort of like model 2 and 3 was, but you can see the filter board is the same as the other Naomi ones. I actually have two of these. Here's another one right here. It's a House of the Dead 2, but with the cover taken off, so you can see the motherboard looks really similar to the other Naomi ones, the production versions. Here's like the ROM cart, only it didn't come in a case like the later versions that used this one here. It was just a board that plugged in. And thing that's different about this one is it used a different, what they call a holly chip. So that's why House of the Dead 2 isn't playable other than in this format with the original motherboard, the original ROM. You can't net boot it, you can't put it on a compact flash card because it'll boot but it won't play. It's so slow that the instructions are wrong. You can tell that the game's just not meant to be played on the final revision Naomi boards. So I got two here. That one there with the full cage that I put back together is Dark Soft's, and this one here is mine. Mine I actually got, it was I bought it in pieces and I couldn't get it working, and then when we bought his fully working, I used the parts to figure out what was wrong with it, and now mine's fully working too. And you're able to get it working, and that's why I'm making the video. So let me just show you my setup here. This right here is just a regular ATX power supply. It's a regular PC power supply. And where I have it coming down here into one of my wiring adapters right here. This harness here, if I disconnect it, well, I don't have to disconnect it, but basically starting this harness all the way down to the Naomi power connectors there. That's a harness I bought off eBay. It was out of an initial D cabinet. I just bought it because it kind of extended my power, so I didn't have to have the power supply right next to the PCB. But this right here is just an adapter I handmade, so I can use an ATX power supply to power it. I just bought the connector here to plug it into, and it does well powering it. So that comes into there. That's power down there. You also see I have this wire coming off that I have various PC power connectors. And what I have here is I have one of those Chinese video converters, because for some reason Naomi does not display properly on my LCD unless I have that. So I got that. That's also powering right here. It's powering a Revision 1 Sega JVS IO, and of course this is my S-JIHP PCB, which stands for Sega JVS IO Helper PCB. Since I'm using a gun, normally I have player 1 and player 2 ports. Since I'm using a gun and it only has one button, I'm using a splitter. And so you can see here I've got the gun. This is the gun wiring. If you look up here, it's a Revolution X gun, and I have it adapted to run into my S-JIHP. And then the other side is just a Supernova controller, which is what I based my S-JIHP's pinout off of. So I use this to get my coin, my start, and if there's other buttons that I don't have, for example, House of the Dead 2 reloads by pointing off screen, but you could also use button 2 to reload if you wanted to. Let's say you had maybe a pump shotgun or something you wanted to reload, you could do that. So that's the setup there, and of course it all comes up to the LCD right there. So I'm going to get the camera situated. I'm going to show you me booting it up, calibrating the guns, and playing a little bit. So recently a lot of people have been watching my YouTube videos, videos of my S-JIHP, and watching me play gun games that were designed for use with light guns and screen sensors, and they see me using the Revolution X gun, the positional gun, and it kind of blows their mind that I'm able to play the games that way. And we can kind of explain how it works. This is your standard Sega JVS IO. It's a revision 1. All right, this down here is your digital inputs, and this here is an analog. So this connector here controls like your XY pots, your steering wheel if you're on a racing game, the X and Y axis on the gun, maybe a steering wheel for the racing, your gas pedal, your brake pedal. Those are all analog controls, and they all get inputted on here. This would be like for your start button if you were using a joystick game, for your joystick up, down, left, right, any of your digital inputs, including like coin switch, start button, etc. So the way the games originally worked was, in addition to this I/O, they would have another PCB that was a gun sensor PCB, and that gun sensor would be connected to the guns and the gun sensors, and then that would have a cable coming off of it connected to the analog. So basically the screen sensor PCB would analyze where you shot your gun, figure out the coordinates, and then put the coordinates through the analog here, and they'll show on the game where you fired. Now since I'm not using that, I'm bypassing that, cutting out the middleman. I'm using just an XY gun, which has the X and Y pots constantly moving and telling the I/O the position of your cursor. So when you go and pull the trigger, it automatically knows where the position is, where the coordinate is on the screen, and it can just fire the shot without needing to go through the sensor board. Now, basically any gun game that uses a Sega JVS I/O, that should work for an XY gun. It works in all the Naomi games, works on the Lindbergh games, Shihiro. I have other videos on my YouTube channel where I'm playing Virtual Cop 3. Including House of the Dead 2, which is Naomi also, and obviously the subject of this video. So that's in a nutshell why this works with XY guns. Alright, so here we are ready to play. Go ahead and power it on. To power the PCB, it's also going to power the Chinese video converter, the I/O, and of course the S-JIHP. You're going to see it's going to boot up saying starting House of the Dead 2. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to calibrate the guns, and the way we do that is we come back to the motherboard and we hit the test button. You can see the screen comes up. Then I'll just have to hit the button until I get to game test mode. Then it's going to be gun setting. Boom. And the way I will adjust it is by going to, you can check the gun mark, just hit gun mark check. It's going to bring up your cursor, and when I move my gun around, you can see exactly where it's going on and off screen. I've already calibrated this one to go off screen. Where you see where it says out of screen, that means it's going to reload every time you do that. So I've already calibrated this. But what you would do is you could go to, let's hit test button to exit. You go to player 1 gun adjustment, and it's going to ask you to shoot at the X. So the way I would do it, the positional gun, let me set this up so you can see. Right, so the way I would do this with the positional gun, since I want to be able to shoot off screen, I would take my gun to the extreme up in the corner, then I would come down about half an inch and over about half an inch and pull the trigger. Alright, then I'll come down to that bottom X. I'm going to come up about half an inch, over about half an inch, and pull the trigger. See, it says now calculating. and it's deciding what our cursor, where the gun's going to shoot at, and you can now test it. Make sure you're going off screen so you can reload. Alright, and that's how you calibrate it. And she's ready to go. So I'm going to come back in a second and we're going to play some. Alright, so the game is loaded back up. I'm just going to play a little bit so you can see. Playing with the Revolution X gun. So I'm going to reach down here and add some coins. I'm going to go ahead and hit start.
The house of the...
And you'll be able to watch me play a little bit.
We're meeting G over there.
Yes, the voice acting is the best in any game ever. I'm doing is shooting off screen to reload.
Please be safe, G. How could anyone do this? Thank you.
Sit, Kishi, sit. Good dog.